stand for the flag salute. I pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lois, can you read the statement of certification of the meeting?
That certification of meeting has been advertised according to sunshine law.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Venera,
Here.
Mr. Zumbri, Mrs. Inaugurata. Here. Mr. Kennedy,
I excuse myself because I have my Civic Association breakfast at the Chandelier.
Mr. Conti,
Here.
Mr. Walsh,
Here.
Mrs. Shaw. Here. Mr. Medicini.
Here.
Mr. Coviello. Mr. Anello.
Mr. Coviello said he will be attending, but he'll be late.
Mr. DeMarcus. Mr. Harris.
Here.
Mrs. DeVito. Here. Mr. DeLay.
Here. Do I have a motion for the approval of minutes of the December 10th, 2015 meeting? Motion. Lois, call roll.
Mr. Venera.
Yes.
Mrs. Inaugurata.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw.
Yes.
Mr. Medicini.
Take off part. Chairman's comments, there's nothing at this time. Correspondence and payment of bills. Anyone have any questions or comments? Old business? Anything you'd like to bring up on the old business? We have no resolutions. New business? Now we have an application before the board. It's PB 2015-10, 350 Franklin Avenue, Lyndhurst Real Estate Holding. It's construct a parking lot with 27 spaces to service the Chandelier Restaurant. Are you ready?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, council's name is Robert Cassione. The firm is Cassione for Lot 0524 Union Avenue in Belleville. I represent the applicant in this matter, Lyndhurst Real Estate Holding, LLC, the owner of 350 Franklin Avenue. My client is seeking to use the property as accessory parking for the adjacent catering facility, the Chandelier Restaurant, which is at 340 Franklin Ave, immediately adjacent to it. It was the old fruit and vegetable stand for anybody who doesn't know the exact location. We're seeking variance relief for parking within 5 feet of a lot line, spaces that are 9 by 18 as opposed to 9 by 19, and a design waiver with regard to aisle width of 22 as opposed to 24 feet. We're also seeking conditional use approval, as this is a conditional use in the zone, and preliminary and final site plan approval. The witnesses you'll hear from are John Apicella of Lyndhurst Real Estate Holding, LLC, and the Chandelier Restaurant, and Anthony Marucci, the engineer and planner. I'd like to call Mr. Apicella as my first witness. John?
Please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes.
Please state your name and spell your last name.
John Apicella, A-P-I-C-E-L-L-A,
Mr. Apicella, what is your business address
340 Franklin Avenue.
and your occupation?
Catering.
How long have you been in the catering business?
Personally, 35 years. Family's been there 41.
And are you one of the members of Lyndhurst Real Estate Holding?
Yes.
And are you also the member of the Lyndhurst Diner, the owner of the adjacent business, the Chandelier?
Yes.
And briefly describe the business and the current parking arrangements.
It's a catering facility, seats up to 250 people. Our lot is located across the street behind the Wendy's. We also rent the Valley National Bank up the street on the corner of Belleville and Franklin Avenue. And we valet cars back and forth in both spots.
And why are you seeking additional parking?
We just did necessary for more spaces, but also convenient for the smaller parties where they don't have to cross Franklin Avenue, for safety reasons, that's what we're checking out as much as possible.
And does the entity currently own the lot immediately adjacent to the Chandelier Restaurant?
Yes.
And briefly, explain what it is you're seeking approval to do.
Just make it a parking spot, parking lot, with roughly 27 to 30 spots, according to the plans. It's directly next door, so we do own a lot of the street, but it's attached, so it's just looking to get more spots next to the street.
I have no further questions of this witness.
You want us to question him, or you want to read all the witnesses up?
If you want to question him, I think it would be better to do it now, and then I, of course, have another witness. Mr. Marucci?
Please raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and spell your last name.
Anthony Marucci, Marucci.
Mr. Marucci, what is your business address
116 Whippany Road, Whippany, New Jersey.
and your occupation?
I'm a licensed professional engineer, land surveyor, professional planner in the state of New Jersey
And how long practicing in your field of engineering?
since 1979, 78 actually.
Not as long as me. Give us a bit of your background with regard to your education.
Mr. Marucci's been here before. We'll accept
Chapman
it.
is an expert both in the field of engineering and planning?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Did you prepare the engineering site plan for the proposed parking lot?
Yes,
And is that an exact copy of what has been submitted?
yes it is.
So then, with the help of the sketch that you have, would you review the location of the property?
The property is 350 Franklin Avenue. It's tax map block 3401, lot 11. It's on the east side of Franklin Avenue, just north and adjacent to the existing Chandelier Restaurant.
And what is the zoning at the site, Mr. Marucci?
The zone is BB, general business.
And would you describe the existing site?
If I can refer to page 2 of my plans, that is the existing condition. The existing site right now has a small one-story frame building, which, as was explained before, was the old vegetable and fruit stand. And it sits almost in the center of the property. The majority of the front of the property is paved. The rest of it is just natural in the rear. And one significant feature is that right now in its present condition, it gently slopes towards the rear, towards the adjacent residential properties. And I wanted to make that point because we're going to correct that.
And will the building be demolished should this application be approved?
Yes.
And would you describe the proposed site and proposed improvements?
Should the board accept this application and approve it, the existing building will be removed, and the site will be cleared, and a parking lot will be created with 2 driveways, an entrance driveway to the south and an exit driveway to the north. I chose this counterclockwise circulation pattern to allow for more sight distance as you exit the parking lot. If the driveway were closer to the restaurant, you'd have a sight distance problem, so I chose the counterclockwise direction. Basically, we would be striping out 27 parking spaces, 26 regular spaces, and 1 van accessible handicap space.
You talked about the slope. Would you describe the topography just a little further, if you would?
Yes. And again, I'll refer to sheet 3, which is my grading and drainage plan. As I stated before, in its existing condition, the property slopes gently towards the rear. So at the present time, any stormwater runoff basically goes onto the adjacent residential properties in the rear. We're going to change that or alleviate that by creating, or by raising that elevation in the back, by installing a retaining wall, and now the drainage will be staying on our property, and we're going to create a dry well system, so the water will be collected and infiltrated into the ground with an overflow out to the street. So that's going to make drainage better for the adjacent properties, our property, and also for the street, because you won't have that much water going out onto Franklin Avenue.
Would you describe the proposed lighting?
That's sheet 4 of my plan. We chose a shoebox type lighting. The poles are 18 foot high, so they're not too high. We have 3 poles that'll light up the entire parking lot, and it's designed such that there will be no spillage onto any adjacent properties.
You talked about the ingress and egress. Can you just review the number of spaces and approximately where those parking spaces are located?
Again, with the counterclockwise direction, as you drive into the site, there'll be parking spaces perpendicular to the existing Chandelier Restaurant building, and then opposite that, in other words, parallel to Franklin Avenue, there will be 8 spaces that will be perpendicular to the rear property line.
Are you suggesting any restriction with regard to any turn procedure at this location?
At the present time, no.
And are there any zoning violations with regard to this proposal?
There are 3, what I consider minor variances associated with the parking design. The first is the parking space stall size. The ordinance requires a stall size of 9 foot wide by 19 feet deep. We're proposing 9 foot by 18. The second is the parking space setback from the property line. The ordinance requires 5 feet, and we have 1.5 feet. But I just want to emphasize that the close proximity to the property line is basically along our own property line where the restaurant is, and also to the north where we abut another driveway. In the rear, where we abut the residential properties, we are maintaining that 5 feet. The third variance is the minimum drive aisle width. The ordinance requires 24 feet, and we're proposing 22.
And do you feel that these variances fit under C1 or C2 or both?
I believe they fit under both, under the C1. First of all, the property is 100 foot by 100 foot, and that's the best way we can come up with a parking layout, because we don't have any more land, obviously, to make it any larger. And that's what restricts us with these driveway widths and the space depths. I believe that under both the C1 hardship criteria, based on the size of the property, those variances can be granted, but also under C2, where the benefits outweigh any detriments. And the benefits are what I expressed before. Having this parking lot adjacent to the restaurant makes it much safer now than pedestrians having to cross Franklin Avenue. That's a much safer setup for the parking. The drainage will be improved, not only for the restaurant parking lot, but also for the adjacent property owners. The lighting will be an improvement, and it's also an aesthetic improvement based on what's there today. I mean, quite frankly, the site is in the state
Mr. Conti,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Mrs. Shore,
Yes.
Mr. Medikini,
Yes.
Mr. Anello.
Yes.
Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Someone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order. There was an advertisement in Star Legend along the way that there was going to be a public hearing tonight regarding 675, 690 Main Street.
Mr. De Lorenzo, you want to address that?
Yeah, there's nothing going on with that, and we didn't, planning board didn't have nothing to do with that. I think the redevelopment attorney put something out. He was told by somebody else, not by the board, and he tried to pull it, and he couldn't pull it from the newspaper. So they're not having anything.
Because it didn't have either the planning board secretary or the town clerk's name.
Yeah.
It was scheduled for
Yeah,
tonight.
Mr. De Lorenzo brought it to my attention tonight.
So the developer put it in the paper.
We don't know who did it. We might think it might be the redevelopment attorney, we don't know if it was Kevin Esposito directed him at the beginning of January, you know, we get all mixed,
Just one thing, then the planning board had no knowledge whatsoever of that advertisement.
Correct.
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
Correct. Meeting's adjourned.